am Maria of Historical Belle, and today I'm going to be talking about making a toddler ensemble that is dated from 1855 to 1865. So I ordered this pattern from Fig Leaf Patterns. It says K-Fig Patterns here off of Etsy, and it is for sizes 12 months to 4 years old, and this is an ensemble. It has a dress and a little jacket, which is super cute, and this is for boys and girls because boys and girls for a very long time would wear dresses. It's kind of like their version of a onesie. It's easy to change the diapers of said children, and it's just easier to wear. Not always would boys wear them until they are 4 years old. That's kind of a personal family choice as to when you would put the boy in breeches. Some families and some time periods we even have like a breeching ceremony, which is like a rite of passage for the boy. It's when he gets his first pair of breeches and his first pair of breeches and pants that he wears, and it's a big deal. But here I am going to be making a size 12 months dress for my soon-to-be niece, and I'm super excited about it. I've never really made something so small, so I'm really excited about this. I have made one other costume for my soon-to-be nephew for Christmas, but that's really like the only two projects that I've made for children. If you clicked on this thinking I was pregnant, no, I'm not. Sewing instructions. Those are always helpful. Oh, that's fantastic. So, right on the first page of the sewing instructions, the first thing that they do is have a whole historical note section. This is fantastic information with pictures and everything. And it talks about the dress that this one is based off of, that is from the personal collection of the person who wrote this. Oh wow. It goes on for pages. It's still going. Oh! So many pictures. So many reference photos. All of these photos look very much like, well, this pattern. So it looks like I can make this out of a white gown. White gowns seem to be like kind of the basic child's clothing, especially for younger children, so I could make this out of a white, but I feel like having a 12-month-old in a white gown sounds like a bad idea, because they're walking and therefore going to get things dirty. So I'm thinking like a brown or a green, something that blends in with nature. That was just 19 pages of notes. Now I'm to the sewing instructions. Well, no one can say they are not detailed. I think this is the most detailed pattern I have ever seen in my life. Oh, and then they give you trim patterns. Oh, wow. Oh, I'm going to have to choose. I'm going to have to make so many decisions before I even cut this out based on variations. Alright, well, I guess it's time to cut this out and then find some fabric.
My love got me these amazing vintage sewing weights. They're called Wonder Weights at an estate sale, and I am super excited to use them for this project. As you can see here, I am laying out the pattern on the fabric that I have chosen, and it took me a really long time to actually begin cutting out this pattern because there were so many different variations that I could choose for this pattern. So I could honestly make use the same pattern and make an entirely different dress, which, I mean, it would look kind of the same, but also it would have different treatments and it would have a different look. It really would. And then, of course, if I make out a different fabric, it would also have a very different look. For the fabric, I chose this light brown and creamed check fabric from my fabric stash in my basement because, well, it's in my basement, so I already had it on hand, and I think it is honestly perfect for a little girl's dress from this time period. The check is the right scale for a small child. It's a very small check, so you don't want to have a really large print on a really tiny human. It might not really look right. So I think this small pattern is going to look good on a, small human. And also, it's brown. It's an earth color, so I know she's going to be wearing this dress outside a lot. She loves the outdoors, so we don't have to worry about it getting dirty. The small print is going to hide some of those stains, and also it's brown. It's already the color of dirt. But also, it's a historically correct choice because what we consider to be quote-unquote gendered colors today, we think of little boys in blue and little girls in pink. Well, it was almost completely different back in the Victorian times. Boys would have more of the reds. The red color spectrum was what boys would wear. That includes pinks and peaches. And girls were going to have more of the cooler color spectrum in the Victorian era, which included blues and browns. So here I am setting the very tiny sleeve into the very tiny bodice. I can't get over how tiny and how little fabric this dress took. I'm not used to sewing clothes for children, and it's honestly, it kind of boggles my mind a little bit. Just these were really remnant scrap fabric that I had, and I still have extra fabric because this dress is just so tiny. I just put a gather stitch on the top and bottom of the bodice, and now I am gathering it together. There I have just gathered the bottom of the bodice together. It is a gathered bodice. It has a gather run on the top, and it has a gather run stitch on the bottom. So right here I have gathered the bodice together. The top is stitched, and I'm about to gather that, well, right now. This is one of the variations that I chose to do, is have a gathered bodice, because the other variation that you could do would be to have a knife pleated bodice and skirt. I chose to gather because I thought that was going to be faster, and with everything, I only have a limited amount of time. I also work full-time. This is a fun hobby that I like to do, sewing and also making YouTube videos. But there are only so many hours in a day, and that really sometimes really dictates the sewing treatments that I choose to do. So here I just pressed the neckband. This is going to go on top of the bodice and bind the top bodice together along with the sleeves. What I think is kind of fun about these little kids' clothes from the 1800s is that it kind of has an off-the-shoulder look to it. Some of these dresses, this dress that I'm making here, it definitely has an off-the-shoulder look where you can kind of see the tops of the children's shoulders. And I think sometimes you might think that a little risque for the 1800s people, those prim and proper Victorians, but it's a good style of clothing for children who are constantly growing. That's another thing that I noticed while making this outfit. The amount of gathered and the amount of ways that I could let this dress out so that it could grow with the child is amazing. Just think, they outgrow this, right? They outgrow this bodice. Well, really, they didn't outgrow the bodice. They outgrew the binding on the top there. I can take it out. I can let some of the gathers loose, put a new binding on the top, and ta-da, it fits them again. Now I have pinned that top binding onto the bodice, and I am going to sew that on with my sewing machine. Now, the sewing instructions for this dress actually are all for hand sewing the dress, and they are incredibly detailed. They are fantastic. I read over all of them. If you include all of the historical notes and the sewing instructions, the packet is 34 pages long. It's incredibly detailed. I am very impressed with it, but I kind of had to make up my own sewing machine instructions for it because, again, didn't have time or the willpower to hand sew this toddler dress. I honestly don't know how much my niece is going to wear it, just because I don't know how many chances she's going to have to wear it until she outgrows it, because children, they have this tendency to grow, and therefore I didn't want to put all that time and effort into making a hand-sewn masterpiece that might not get worn all that much, and also I don't want to put that much time and effort into something that I have to resign myself to the fact that a child is wearing and therefore can easily just get stained or destroy, because children are kind of messy sometimes, just because trying to keep yourself clean is really hard. I also struggle with that sometimes, so that is why I chose to machine sew it for time and sanity purposes, because I want her to enjoy the dress. I want me to enjoy watching her wear the dress and not worry about it. Therefore, we're doing this. Here I am doing tucks in the skirt. This is actually a whole lot of fabric, and I was beginning to wonder, is this going to actually fit in the waistband of this 12-month-old's dress, because it's a lot of fabric? The answer is yes. Yes, it does, and I'm actually glad I did not skimp on the fullness of the skirt, because it is super cute and super full and super puffy. But here I'm doing tucks. So in sewing, a tuck is a fold or a pleat in the fabric that is sewn or fastened in place. Here I'm pinning it. I am going to sew it later. Now, small tucks, sometimes they're called pin tucks, because I'm doing multiple here. So small tucks, especially multiple parallel tucks, may be used to decorate clothing or, just household items. But here it is clothing. And when the tucks are very narrow, they are called pin tucks or pin tucking. I don't know if you could technically call mine narrow. They're about 1 inch in length. But tucks, they are not just decorative. Sometimes people will well, they don't actually have a function. But I disagree strongly. They do have a function, because I don't know if this is actually a sewing term or not, but I have heard them called growth tucks, especially in children's clothing, because when a child grows, you let out one of the tucks and suddenly the dress is longer and fits them again, and it's not too short. Tucks are super easy to do with the sewing machine. I'm just sewing a straight line. It's super easy, but it looks super fine and delicate and an elegant decorative portion of the dress. It looks great, but super easy to do. I thought they were going to be far more complicated, but they really aren't. And here I am just ironing those down. And tucks were one of the variations of the patterns that I could do for decoration on the skirt, so I obviously decided to do. And these type of tucks became incredibly popular in the later half of the 19th century, especially on things that on fabrics that were like fine linens or cotton fabric. I'm pretty sure this is a cotton that I'm using on this dress here. I'm not completely sure because it's from my basement sewing stash, and I'm really bad about memorizing what the fabric content is. Usually I just buy things that I know are going to be good for historical things and that I don't actually have to remember. I just gathered up the skirt, and now I am pinning the skirt to the waistband. So again, I chose to gather the skirt. I also could have knife pleated the skirt, but I think if you were going to knife pleat the skirt, you also need to knife pleat the bodice so that there is some sort of consistency. So either knife pleat everything or gather everything. I chose to gather everything. But like I said, there are so many variations that this pattern says that you can do. It says and I'm reading from the pattern here, you will need to choose a neckband variation, sleeve variation, skirt variation, and waistband size. Built into the patterns, a gray area of adjustment because individual length growth is so different from child to child. Please measure your child and adjust the pattern accordingly. End quote. So many just things to choose before I even started cutting out the pattern. But then also, one of the challenging parts of this dress is that I didn't ever actually get to measure the child because I don't, sadly, live near my future niece. So I'm just kind of winging it based on things that I've looked up on the internet for what a normal size and what normal measurements are for a 12-month-year-old, and hoping that that works. So stay tuned to the end of this video to see if this dress that I made actually fits my niece. Here I am attaching the bodice to the waistband that is attached to the skirt. So I kind of decided that the waistband is going to be what's holding everything together. I put a band on the top, and then there's the bodice, and then there's the waistband, and then the skirt, and now it's really all coming together. And look how tiny it is. It's so tiny. It kind of went together really fast. I think I spent a total of 3 or 4 afternoons doing this after I got off work of cutting it all out and sewing it all together. So it went together pretty fast, which was so nice, and it looks, if I may say so, for my own project, really good. Because I had never really made something for someone so small before, and I was honestly very impressed with myself in the making of this dress. But here I am just sewing down the bodice to the waistband, and the dress is really, it's coming together. It came together really fast, and I thought that was really nice. There weren't a whole lot of pieces. For back closures, I could do a button or hook and eye, but I chose to do a hook and eye. One of the very interesting things about clothing from this time period, the 1860s and the 1800s in general, is that children's clothing fastens in the back, while adults' clothing mainly fastens in the front. If it's a everyday garment, special occasion garments have special rules. But for everyday pieces of clothing, adults' clothing fastens in the front where you can get yourself into it, and children's clothing fastens in the back where someone has to help you, probably a parent or guardian, has to help you into it. At least for girls. For boys, rules get a little different. But for girls, it was a big deal to have a dress made up with buttons or with hooks and eyes in the front versus the back. It meant you were growing up and becoming a lady. So here she is, and she is so cute. Just makes my heart melt. And the dress does indeed fit. I was nervous about this, but she put it on. It fit well, and she's just so precious. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, happy sewing.